45 days, then something for the fisheries industry. So, I mean, it's been marked out as a holistic approach, keeping in mind that we have a target to become a $5 trillion economy.
So Atmanirbhar package, you mean, is aimed at not only, making the economy come out of the pandemic, but also achieving the first goal of achieving the $5 trillion economy.
Well, I can't call it the first or the second goal, but it's certainly an important step in that direction. And keeping in mind, and if you hear what the Honorable Finance Minister Nirmala Ji has also said after the Prime Minister had announced that this is not a package driven. What needs to be done will be done. So in terms of it, it's a continuous process. This is a government that has its ear to the ground and will take whatever step is needed in the interest of the economy and the nation.
Since you mentioned, Nalinji, about ear to the ground, that the government has ear to the ground. Now, and as MSME was an integral package, a segment of the Atmanirbhar Bharat package. But, these policies somewhere, because most of the MSMEs feel, and they have voiced out into the media, that these are rosy on paper. When they actually go to the bank, at the ground level, they're not given the kind of assistance. Maybe there may be issues at the bank level. They are wary of giving credit about their recovery or whatever the entire atmosphere must be. So then, these things then true to be on the paper. But at the end, when the implementation comes, the governance aspect of it comes, somewhere it's not being meted out to the real beneficiaries.
Kailash, I would have not countered this. Let me put it in a different way. I can counter this in terms of the fact that regularly after the announcement of these schemes and packages, the union government has been putting out the figure of how much has been dispersed. The proof of the pudding is in eating it. So if a dispersal has taken place out of that money, it means somebody has taken that money. The dispersal can't be in the air. So therefore, dispersal is taking place. I see people tend to generalize. And there are different reasons. After all, ultimately, it's being done by the bank. But then obviously, there would be an eligibility factor. There would be other factors. So I can't get into that detail because that's not my area of work. In terms of it, I'm not handling that responsibility. But I can tell you is that, and you should in governance now go out and print those figures so that even your readers and in other broadcasts, they get to do it. I don't have the figures handy with me at the moment. But yes, that kind of thing has been done regularly.
Sure.
And dispersal figures, I'm talking about the dispersal figures.
The dispersal figures, yes. I mean, government was at it giving out the dispersal figures, but then there are realities to it as well.
In fact, unfortunately, Kailash, what happens is these things don't make news. I mean, in the world that we live in, these don't make it to the headlines, but these are important inputs. That's why I'm requesting governance now to take it up.
Absolutely. Now, since you're speaking about headlines, these days news channels are making a lot of headlines regarding the entire rating controversy that is clouding over it. Do you now believe that the government should step in and maybe the entire rating framework should be something driven by the government or an autonomous body?
I haven't studied it. And as a lawyer, I'd like to always make a comment on something that's in terms of it, after studying the matter. In this, look, this has different angles, but I can tell you the principles. After all, the media is very important. It is called the fourth estate of democracy. Having a free, vibrant media is something we all are committed to. In this country, the media has been muzzled only once, which is an emergency. We all remember that days. Everybody does. And therefore, that's something that...
But your opposition, I'm sorry, I'm intruding you in between. But your opposition recently on the same platform that we are in said that right now also the media is in the same format as it was in the emergency. It is just lopsided towards one side.
Kailash, हिंदी में मैं बोलता हूँ.
हाँ, जरूर.
इसको हिंदी में बोलता हूँ. जितनी गाली मोदी जी और भाजपा और की सरकार को लोग देते हैं खुलेआम सरेआम मीडिया के माध्यम से, तो ये कैसी मसलमेंट है? Although I don't understand, as I said, the proof of the pudding is in eating it. Look at what we see in the social media. I mean, it's right to speech, free speech. I think, that's a charge that is made without any foundation. We have a robust media. Do you think the media will permit itself to be muzzled?
That is something always that the opposition believes, that the media is never favoring them.
They are issueless. They want to manufacture issues. They have a right as an opposition party, but unfortunately, they are manufacturing issues without foundation.
And that you believe that because it is without foundation, the media is not paying heed to.
Okay, you tell me. Have you ever received a call from anybody?
Hmm.
You are in the area of governance now.
Hmm.
You cover important issues,
Ab-
saying, "Ki, Kailash, you can't do this." I'm
But
asking,
that,
okay, which channel has a channel ever come out and said we can't do this? Okay,
hmm.
tell me reverse. Have there not been critical stories of the BJP and the government on every channel? I mean, so therefore, I'm saying
That's the
those who are most
fundamental duty
critical
of
of us
media.
also are functioning really.
That's the fundamental duty of
So,
media. If I am not, let's say, in
so
governance
therefore,
now,
that's what I'm saying. How is the media muzzled? How is the media muzzled if they can freely criticize and are criticizing?
you feel that the media is independent, and yes, the media's job is
I don't feel. I believe it, and I'm convinced it's independent.
absolutely. Now, since we were talking about the pandemic, Narenji, the pandemic can also open a door of opportunities for India.
Gee.
Bangladesh's economy is supposedly doing much better than us. But at the same time, there are talks that due to our stringent bureaucratic procedures, hostile business environment, we might lose out to countries like Vietnam, Philippines, Taiwan, who are more welcoming. Your suggestions in the same?
I was sharing with you earlier in the program that the FDI figures, if I remember correctly, for the period just preceding what we are speaking was about 35 billion, which is higher than last year. And on a year-to-year comparison, that's testimony that yes, investments are coming in and they see India as attractive. Every country has its own set of USPs, but Atmanirbhar Bharat and ease of doing business are programs by which the government of India is pushing to make India a more attractive destination. We have consistently improved on the scale of ease of doing business. Where were we in 14?
Hmm.
140 or something.
Hmm.
We were really low. Now we have come down to 70. We perhaps have come down even lower. I mean, improved. That's a massive improvement. So ease of doing business is part of it. We can't compare ourselves with, say, Bangladesh and others. For example, in terms of Bangladesh, which is an export oriented, there are benefits in terms of tariff that they get when
Hmm.
they export to various entities globally.
Hmm.
We are no longer in that. We've evolved from that stage, which we perhaps were 25 or 30 years ago.
Hmm.
So I feel these are incorrect comparisons. Many people tend to compare us with, say, Singapore. Singapore is an island state. The total population of Singapore would be equal to a city in India.
Hmm.
So you can't make those comparisons.
Probably an area of a city of India, just an
Possible.
area.
Yes.
Yeah.
And therefore, to answer it as a final thing, is don't forget investments and attractiveness of India also comes for the fact that we have a vibrant, huge market.
Yes.
And that's also an opportunity domestically.
Hmm. As I said, India is a very resilient economy. For Indian economy to be on its feet, we have a demand which is coming from the 1.3 billion that we are in. Be it textiles, be it FMCG, be it e-commerce, be it all sectors. Now, Nalinji, there is a lot of talk in the media also going on regarding the regulation of content over the digital media. You have codes, you have bodies which are regulating your broadcast media, your print media. But social media or dissemination of content, maybe it can be entertainment or news over social media, is some spot where the government is deliberating since a long time. Your views regarding government's intervention on regulating the content on social media.
Look, Kailash, I don't know what the government will decide
Hmm.
because there are issues of even jurisdiction in terms of how do you regulate it. But I know one thing that freedom of speech is an extremely valuable fundamental right under Article 19
Hmm.
of the Constitution of India. But under the same Constitution, freedom of speech in Article 19, there are reasonable restrictions.
Hmm.
एंड मैं अक्सर इस बात को कहता हूं
Hmm.
हिंदी में कि अगर हम सभ्य बोलना भूल जाएंगे तो सभ्यता कैसे बचेगी इफ वी
Hmm.
एंड इन इंग्लिश इफ वी फॉरगेट टू बी सिविल हाउ कैन वी हैव अ सिविलाइजेशन so this is an individual thing that I always hope that people will remember. We can say अपनी बात शालीनता से भी रखी जा सकती है
बिल्कुल.
मजबूती से रखी जा सकती है गाली गलौज की आवश्यकता नहीं how can you threaten say a lady whoever that is you may disagree with her or threaten her daughters with the most obscene things in terms of rape threats and others
Hmm.
that's not abusive language I feel that is a reflection of oneself मतलब ये दुनिया को आप बता रहे हैं कि आपकी कैसी सोच है मतलब दिस इज नॉट रियली अ कमेंट ऑन द अदर पर्सन जिस किसी को आप गाली जब सुनाते हैं तो पहले तो ये है कि आप इस गाली को दे रहे हैं तो आपकी कैसी सोच है ना So,
Hmm.
I always believe self-regulation is the best way. But yes, nothing can be beyond the constitutional framework. If there is the freedom of speech, there is also the fact of somebody's freedom not being curtailed by fear or by other things, because after all, life and liberty comes under Article 21. If a person feels intimidated or feels stalked or feels worried because of threats that are coming because of the exercise of free speech of somebody else,
Hmm.
then that also has to be viewed. So I think we are reaching a point where these issues are now getting discussed. Perhaps they will get debated, and over a period of time, somewhere or the other, some kind of framework may come. Now, it may be self regulated by the bodies that are the platforms. Whether it would require the court to intervene, whether it would require laws to come in, I can't say,
Hmm.
because that's a much larger debate.
Sure. Nalinji, with the onset of this pandemic, our health infrastructure in a way was exposed, you can say. Rural health infrastructure was not equipped at all, leaving most of the people high and dry. How do we ensure better health facilities to our people? And health is somewhere, a basic right. You can call it a fundamental right of an individual living in a nation.
Kailash, there was a very interesting time. Modi ji was addressing the party national executive, if I remember, a
Hmm.
few years ago. And he was talking about Ayushman Bharat.
Yes.
Or maybe it was a public rally. I can't remember. It was one of these two. But as far as I recall, it perhaps was a party national executive. And in this, or meeting, and in this, he was pointing out that Ayushman Bharat, besides free treatment for the poorest of the poor, is also an opportunity for expansion
Hmm.
of health facilities beyond the metros to the smaller metros to rural India.
Hmm.
And he was in that context pointing out that we would first need doctors. So we, in our 5 years, which is the government of the BJP of Modi ji, had first increased the number of postgraduate seats, the number of MBBS seats, because doctors have to be available.
Hmm.
The second is by putting all these surgeries, etc., and all that, and making it available in those places, at least hospitals or smaller clinics would invest into health, knowing that there is a stream of people whose payments will now come from the government.
Hmm.
Now, in states like Assam, because you mentioned I'm also the additional advocate general of
Yes.
Assam, had an insurance scheme where people could be treated by this insurance scheme of the state up to 5 lakh rupees per family.
Hmm.
Ayushman Bharat is also that kind of an insurance scheme.
Hmm.
So it's a demand in terms of it that always existed in terms of health, but it's also ensuring the democratization or the widespread or the spreading out of health facilities beyond the places where people had to travel for long distances. So Ayushman Bharat is an important step in that direction.
So you believe that with Ayushman Bharat, with the proper implementation of Ayushman Bharat, we would achieve and we would strive to achieve good health infrastructure, especially in our rural areas.
It is leading to an expansion of infrastructure
Hmm.
beyond the metros. There's no doubt about it.
Hmm.
And we have to be, and at least that has to be recognized and acknowledged.
Because with the onset of this pandemic, what was most disturbing to see was tier two cities. We are not talking about the extreme rural areas. Cities like Patna, their infrastructure really got crippled. I mean,
But
patients
I'm sorry to interrupt, Kailash. Imagine that this is a country where we didn't manufacture N95 masks. Today,
nor PPE
yes,
suits.
and now we are, no, now we are.
Now we
Now,
are at,
yes,
at, at the
yeah, we
beginning of
didn't.
the onset.
I'm saying, look at the, and Indians are doing it. Ventilators, we are now doing it in large numbers and at cheaper prices.
Hmm.
PPE kits. I mean, so look, I mean, how much in terms of the pandemic the government made the effort. I remember speaking once to a very senior officer, and he told me something very interesting.
Hmm.
He said, Nalinji, the first thing we needed to do is fabric.
Hmm.
So then we worked with the textile in the textile sector, and we spoke to industries that how do we make the fabric.
Hmm.
Then in manufacturing, that machine is needed, which does that cannot be a normal machine
Hmm.
because it's called a sealing machine. It has to seal it. It's a PPE kit.
Hmm.
Then other manufacturers said, we will go out and invest and order the machines. So that's all Atmanirbhar Bharat in action.
Hmm. So all these initiatives undertaken were under the Atmanirbhar Bharat, which will definitely make India march towards its ultimate objectives. Now, if we talk about, Narenji, the three bills related to the farmers which were passed by the parliament, and now with the president, as since they have all become laws, hailing it as a transformational piece of legislation for the farmers, the government naturally termed it as pro-farmer. But yet there were protests in Punjab and Haryana, and one of your old allies has distanced themselves. What's your response to it?
I ask myself a simple question. How can choice be bad for somebody? If I had a choice, if I had to go to a shop and buy a shirt, and if tomorrow another shop comes that also offers me the option to buy a shirt, isn't that better in terms of me as a consumer to have choice?
Right.
The same is true for the farmer. How can choice be bad for him? Where is the APMC or the Agricultural Marketing Cooperative, Agricultural Produce Marketing Cooperatives being dismantled? They are there. Nothing has changed. Earlier also they had the choice of MSP. They have the choice of MSP now. Also the government of India has increased the MSP. You must have noted that record MSP collection is taking place, purchase. All this farmers bill has done is done essentially two things. Under trade, which is in the concurrent list, said that if a farmer wishes to sell his or her produce outside the boundary of the state, they can do so if they get a better price. कोई उनको और पैसे देगा तो वो जरूर जाएंगे.
It's a free market. After all, it's a free market.
But at the same time, जो पहले APMC बना हुआ था, that is not gone. It is still there. So what has changed? It is only something additional. So my answer is that all the people who are opposing it for political reasons, and perhaps the governments also have, the states which are now opposing it, perhaps have limited choice because their, so-called supreme leader comes out with a statement once in a while, and then everyone has to follow a track. Today on social media, there is something leaking, and I don't know if it's correct or not, but an alleged letter of Kailashnath ji, perhaps it is true, saying that, to writing to Digvijay ji that, look, what's happening to our party. Now, if that is correct, then it just shows another. You have had 23 leaders in the Congress party who raised this question. So, I mean, for such an old party, for such senior leaders to feel that kind of thing, then that's a separate debate in politics altogether. But coming back to your question on these bills, so by adding choice, and who's done it? Modi ji. Let's look at his government. Hasn't the Swaminathan Commission been adopted? 1.5% of input cost, we are guaranteeing it, doubling farmers' income by 2022. What about 94,000 crores going directly into the bank accounts of marginal farmers? 10 crore of them. It's going. Hasn't MSP increased? Okay, this country did not even produce hing in our food and in your food, also in your cuisine. How important
it's a very integral part.
Yes, it comes from Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Iran. 750 crores worth. We have not in 70 years produced hing. The first plant has been put up in Laol Spiti, in the high reaches of Ladakh, because it's a plant that does not require too much water. 5-year experimentation has already started that India should be self-reliant also in hing. I'm giving us one simple example. I mean, amazing, na? So those people who criticize us and tell us about our commitments, okay, has the MSP for pulses not gone up? Isn't pulses now being purchased at this? Are we not? So therefore, the government that has worked for the farmers, who did neem coating of fertilizers? The BJP government. Why? It used to be diverted to the away from agriculture to the drugs industry. But with neem coating, you couldn't divert it. Simple thing. It was introduced in the first tenure of Modi ji. That led to less black marketing of urea and other what you call fertilizers. So this is a government that is scared. He talks about Gaon Garib Kisan, every for the youth, for the middle class, for every section there is something. So that's why I reject the charge in totality. And now, in terms of the other thing, an option of a contract. What does that contract say? Now the risk is of the poor farmer. If nobody buys it, he's stuck. But if someone is saying, I'm going to pay you in advance for a contract to buy your entire produce, I want aloo or I want methi or I want whatever, or tomatoes or pyaz, onions, whatever. Isn't that better for the farmer? And when the APMC hasn't gone, he has the choice to go to the APMC. किसने हटाया? कुछ नहीं हटा. जो था वो है. उससे ज्यादा किया जा रहा है.
Empower किया जा रहा है.
Empower भी है, अवसर भी दिया जा रहा है कि आपके पास choice है. विकल्प है आपके पास, यहाँ भी जा सकते हैं, वहां भी जा सकते हैं.
तो कहीं ना कहीं जैसे एक
Some middlemen will suffer. That I do agree. Some middlemen will suffer, but this is a government that basically is always against middlemen. ना पहले तो
that's why the
सरकारें ही
DBT,
middlemen
that's why the
चलाते थे.
direct benefit transfer.
नहीं, पहले तो सरकारें ही बेनिफिट मिडलमैन चलाते थे. वो टेप्स देखिए ना, कितने टेप्स निकले, मीडिया नहीं निकाले.
नलिन जी, ऑपोजिशन ने रिसेंटली कहा था जो मॉनसून सेशन हुआ पार्लियामेंट का, एंड दे मेंशन इन द मीडिया दैट द प्रोसीजर्स दैट मेक आवर पार्लियामेंट, इट इज टाइम टू बिड देम फेयरवेल. इट वाज रादर अ जाइब at the government that our democracy has changed over the last 5-6 years.
वो कौन सा गाना है? आप तो एक परिवार से आते हैं, your family has also been in films and TV and all. I'm trying to remember क्या था ना कि वो करे तो कुछ, नहीं तो हम करे तो कैरेक्टर ढीला है. I think सलमान खान
तो रास लीला, हम करे तो कैरेक्टर.
Thank you for reminding me. Your youngsters keep track of all these songs. So in that वो exactly वही है. जब उनके समय पे कोई भी ऐसा रूल किया जाता तो सब बढ़िया है. जब हमारे समय में किया जाता तो कहते देश जो है खतरे में है, संविधान
देश का लोकतंत्र खतरे में है,
तंत्र खतरे में है. तो मुझे कई बार ऐसे लगता है कि more than politics, some script writer is helping them to come up with dialogues, because dialogue तो आप किसी रूप में कह सकते हैं, उसका तथ्यों से लेना देना कुछ है ही नहीं.
चलिए, तो ये डायलॉग बाजी है जो आपको लगती है. Nalin ji, do you feel that the booking of the 4 individuals, including a journalist, under the UAPA was a way of shifting the attention from the pressing issue at hand in Uttar Pradesh?
I missed the first part of your question, Kailash. What are we referring to? You're talking of the people who were arrested recently?
Yes, the booking of the 4 individuals, including a journalist, post the Hathras case, under the UAPA was a way of, do you feel that it was a way of shifting the attention from the pressing issue at hand at that time in the state of Uttar Pradesh?
Let me ask you another. We have a very, very sensitive and disturbing image which has come out in the media of some boys going and offering namaz in a temple. Okay, it has happened in Makkah. Now, religion is a very, very sensitive and personal. We all respect each other's religions, everyone's religions, and we have to respect the traditions of it.
Absolutely.
Now, in the investigation, what the media is reporting, I have no direct knowledge, but I can only tell you what I'm seeing in the media. They are reporting that one of the people who did it was also involved in the anti-CA protest. So therefore, when these kind of things, factual things come up, the diversion is not the issue. The issue is the merit of the case. And if I recall, in this also case, it's not about who's a journalist or who's... People are good or people are bad. It has nothing to do with the profession.
Situations are good or situations are bad.
Yes.
So may not be bad.
There are good lawyers. There are lawyers who may not be ethically doing the right thing, but it's all there. The same would apply to doctors, engineers, politicians, in every field, the media. I don't think we should ever generalize, because generalization is very, very dangerous.
So you feel that naturally it was not a manner of shifting the attention from the incident that happened in Uttar Pradesh.
The Hathras incident is before the Supreme Court. And the state has also got to answer. Action has been taken against those who have not done the right thing. Of course, every rape is terrible. And if anyone is going to do anything wrong, an officer, how can you say that we are going to stand by that? But to say diversion of information, and let me say in this arrest, if the police does not have a sound investigation or credible evidence, they will have to answer for it, won't they? There is a judicial process which is separate.
Absolutely. The matter can always be sub judice, and till the time the police presents any sound evidence, then naturally, even the court is bound by providing evidence, and so is the police.
The court will only judge by evidence.
Evidence, absolutely.
The court will, and the police has to make a case on that.
True. Nalinji, we have a lot of viewers with us, and I can see on my panel there are some question and answers that they want to ask you.
Sure.
One question from a gentleman called Sagar, and his question is more or less pertaining to what we discussed, but still I ask, is do you think, and it's a very brevity is his point, that do you think that media is free these days?
You mean in terms of muzzling the media, what you had asked me?
It could be. I can only see his question that do you think his media is free these days? What I can decipher from this question is that do you feel that it is because, see, media as an organization, as you mentioned, and we at Governance Now also, we have done all kind of stories relating to governance. It could be critical of the government, it could be in support of the government because based upon facts. Now, do you feel that today's media is more, the biasness is much to be seen?
No,
Maybe
I think I would use the word bias. I think the change of what I have seen, because I've been associated with the media since 1989.
Yes.
It's over 30 years. In my 30 years, I can tell you that, yes, of course, there's a transformation of the media, and the advent of the social media has transformed even how the media is. But the principles of journalism remain the same. I think where we are now is that the media across platforms, is taking a stand on what they believe they would like to keep the focus. And therefore, they articulate everything around that stand. So if you compare it with the good old days, say 30 years ago, I don't know how young you were then, but 30 years ago, that it was
not born.
I didn't want to say that because I don't want to guess your age. Because nevertheless, I'd say, Kailash, that there was a time in the 80s and the 90s where it was merely announcement. Now you have also the editorial comment, part of the television show or the debate that we sit in, part and parcel of that. So then, as I say, that the editorial right is of the person who runs the channel, or the channel has its own editors to have a point of view. So a report is different to a TV show.
Absolutely.
It is a different genre. You can't compare, say, the debate with a program that says this is the top news of the day and only announces those news. That has its own space. The debate has its own space. I don't think we should mix the two, because the debate is based on views.
News and views are separate.
But so that is pure news. That point. That's why in a newspaper also, you have the news and then you have the pages in the middle, which normally are the articles or the editorials, which is the views part.
True. There's one more question which I can see from another gentleman. What is your thoughts on the politicization of such heinous crimes such as rape cases, like in the one in Hathras or Faridabad? The politicization of such cases.
These are beyond politics. These are human tragedies. And you cannot, and politicization of it is not desirable. But it can't be avoided also, because we do live in a political ecosystem. But yes, they are these are human tragedies that require justice.
And somewhere a fine line has to be drawn.
And that has to be our focus.
True. Thank you so much, Nalinji.
Thank you so much
for joining us this evening on Visionary Talks by Governance Now. It was indeed a complete pleasure hosting you. And thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for also joining us and also sharing your questions for Nalinji. Nalinji, thank you so much. Thank you.
Have a nice evening. Goodbye.
Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.